Christians talk a lot about faith. They sort of throw it around, have faith, or step out in faith. And Catherine Marshall, she talks about it almost as she describes it as a spiritual vision, like we're putting on a pair of glasses. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think she doesn't mention that verse, but in Paul's letter to the Ephesians, remember it talks about, Paul prays that the eyes of our hearts would be enlightened. And I think that's kind of undergirding what she's getting at here. And, Paul talks again in that passage about how, there's basically two realms. There's this world we live in, and then there's the heavenlies, Paul calls it, which seems to be, and I hate to go to Marvel comics, but, what do they call it? Extra dimension or multiverse.
Oh, the multiverse.
Right? Yeah. So there's this spiritual multiverse, and we're kind of in one, and the spiritual realm is here, but they overlap and they're layered. And Christians have a foot in both at the same time, which is way beyond Marvel and way cooler, that we get to live in both at the same time. And that there's something that happens as a Christian through the work of the Holy Spirit, that we begin to have this spiritual eyesight to see what God is doing in the heavenly places and therefore in our lives. And so she talks about faith in that way, that it's learning to see with your spiritual eyes. And of course, there's so many passages in the Bible about people who develop that eyesight. I think that the one that comes to mind most clearly is from John chapter 9, where the man born blind, and you got the Pharisees.
Yes.
It's such a great passage. I remember the first time I read it in seminary. It was like I'd never read it before. It's a long passage, but Jesus, he takes someone who is physically blind, and as the passage goes on, he progressively sees and understands more and more who Jesus is. So he not only gets physical eyesight, but he gets spiritual vision to see Jesus and to see the world as it is. Whereas the Pharisees, who are supposed to be the spiritually enlightened people, they can see with their eyes, but by the end of the passage, they're completely blind to the reality of who Jesus is, and they're blocked off from it. So, that's a great sort of synopsis of the Christian life, is that progressively more and more faith, as it manifests in us, is something that helps us see the way Jesus sees, to see what God is doing. Was it John 5:19? Jesus says, "I only do what I see the Father doing." And if we could be like that,
right?
Jesus says, "Keep your eyes on me. I've got my eyes on the Father. And do what I do."
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Very good. Very good. And then Catherine Marshall closes her chapter by talking about a man named Jamie, who for 25 years was in pain because of a conversation he had overheard, from which he concluded that his parents loved his brother more than they loved him. But then through prayer and faith, he saw the situation differently and found healing. Why do some people wait so long to receive healing?
Yeah, that was a moving story in the chapter, because he sort of had this, he'd heard his parents talking through a closed door, and that was the image in his life, that there was a door closed between him and his parents after that, because he felt like they didn't love him the same way as they loved his brother. And one day he just had this realization that Jesus could heal that. And he had a vision, if I remember right, of the door between him and his mother being bathed in the blood of Christ and then just dissolving.
Wow.
And I thought that was a really good image of, what can happen when we allow the Lord to come in and heal our hurts, whatever they are, whether they're emotional, spiritual, physical, whatever they might be, relational things in our past, but that the power of Christ's blood to heal is amazing. And that all comes into us through the work of the Helper, the Holy Spirit, who brings that reality to bear in our lives. Why do people wait so long? I don't know. I mean, it's remarkable to see, and this in ministry, how long people bear burdens that they think they've got to bear, or that they think they deserve, or whatever, before they actually turn to Jesus and turn to the Holy Spirit and ask for help. So what keeps them? I think it's the same thing we've talked about all along that keeps the Holy Spirit from coming in. It's our ego, it's vanity, it's pride, our own misbegotten sense of self-sufficiency apart from God. Right. All those things, sitting on the throne of our hearts instead of letting God sit on the throne of our hearts. Those are all things that get in the way.
Yes.